of music, film, and theater. They'll be talking about the politics, possibilities, and perils in all these mediums, as well as they're going to be exploring the financing of the creative arts in Kenya. So it's going to be quite a wide-ranging discussion. I'm really, really excited to welcome them here at Baraza. This is the second time each of them has been here. They've been part of Baraza events in different capacities. So join me in welcoming Mugambi and Mbithi to the stage. This is where you clap.
All right. Before we begin, let me just say that I've been a friend of Mbithi for very many years, but I'm still a legit fan of his for his coolness, his honesty, his commitment to just making some dope stuff. So please, one more time for Mbithi Masya. Welcome, man. So I think we're live on YouTube, and here we are with this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful group of people here to enjoy this conversation. Have you been, man? I have not seen you in a while. We haven't had a conversation in a while. I wonder what the last year and a half has been for you.
It's been strange. I guess it has been for everyone. Like, these pandemic times have been weird, interesting, sad, but also they've been a fantastic opportunity to kind of realign with what I really care about and what I want to do with my life, kind of things. You know, a few of those moments have happened. But yeah, it's been strange staying home this much. I haven't done that in a long time. How is it for you?
Oh man, it hasn't been easy. I don't think it's been easy for any of us. It's caused me to question a lot of things, discover life anew, be confident, not confident, but comfortable with not being okay. I think my biggest lesson was that okayness, as was defined to us before the pandemic hit, was inaccurate, and life isn't going to be that thing that we were aspiring to, so let's be okay with what we have now. Yeah, man. All right. We'll get into that. We'll get more into some of the sort of like present pandemic talk. But I think the first question I would like to ask you is, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about how you ended up doing what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about the map, you know, the road that led you here into doing all of these dope things. If it was an event, if it was a series of events.
I think my life, career-wise especially, has been a series of very fortunate events, like just one after the other, and I think basically all led by curiosity, just trying out stuff. Nothing was ever intentional. So, you know, growing up, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and life was different, but you know, I think it was a time when the arts and all of that was not a thing you did. So you didn't really explore it as a career option or any of that. It's just, yeah, he likes to draw sometimes.
Right.
He's a good storyteller sometimes, kind of basics. But then what happened in high school, as part of my own weird, geeky, extracurricular activities, I started learning Photoshop and all these kind of things in the school computer labs. But this is like Photoshop, like, man, version of Speed 5. Not even before CS and all of this thing. It's like very basic things. And then out of high school, I went to uni and
just for the sake of people who want to know, where'd you go to high school? I know you didn't go to Alliance, so we'd have known by now. Yeah. Yeah.
Just up the road from here, and yeah, it was an interesting experience. They really encouraged a lot of extracurricular stuff, just try to figure out stuff, programming, all this kind of stuff. And so when I went to uni, I was going for business and IT, but then I started working part-time at an ad agency doing art direction and graphic design, and that was like, for me, very confusing because I didn't know that career
Yeah,
This was stuff I was doing for fun.
yeah.
But then at that moment, I now also met 3 other crazy guys who ended up becoming very close creative brothers of mine, which is just a band. And they led me to quit the advertising world and focus on just exploring the arts. And there was no real intention with where we were. There was no plan, there was no big dream, like we're gonna go here and there. All right. This isn't working? Okay, cool. So, all right. I hope this is this better? I should project. Okay, I apologize. Sorry. Yeah, and so I met these guys, and we started making music, started shooting music videos for fun with our friends, and this thing kind of caught on. Some of the videos became very popular, and we didn't know why. We started touring. We made some video art exhibitions that went around the world. So it was like all of this was happening without intention, but it was more exploratory curiosity that was making us do things. And then out of that, we took a break from the band just for everyone to kind of explore their own personal interests. And that's when I ventured into film. Wrote a film with you called Kati Kati that surprised us again, I think.
True. We didn't see that coming.
No, not at all. Yeah. With how well it did, and and since then I've been trying to catch that high again, and it's not catching.
Okay, are you talking about film-wise or just basically in creative?
Okay. I guess after making Kati Kati, I moved more into. I tried to expand my skill set by working more in commercials and the ad world, and then I think I kind of reached. What would I call it? It's not the end of that path, but the most I could get for now. So I've now pivoted majorly back into trying to make more fiction work.
All right.
More music.
Okay. Yeah. More fiction work and more music.
Yeah.
Right? Considering the fact that a lot of these were accidents, you're just following something that you felt, oh man, I really want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Could you point out one bit where you thought to yourself, I think I'm doing the right thing here. I think this is what I ought to be doing. I think this is what I love and this is what I want to put everything into. Because I get the sense that you're a lot more intentional about it now. It's no longer accidents.
Yeah. Actually, let me correct that phrasing, because I think calling them accidents might make it sound like I'm very lucky, which I'm not. I think I'll change it to surprises, because basically I knew the work we were putting into things. What would surprise us is whatever is on the other side of the equal sign. So we knew X plus Y equals, we don't know what's going to happen. You just make the thing and you see what happens when it goes out into the world, which I think is a very good thing about art, in that, and all creative work is, as long as it's with you, it's still not complete. It has to live out in the world. So it doesn't matter how many good ideas you have in your head. If it's not, I feel like if it's not out there, it's not complete. That's my own personal philosophy. So I've still always been intentional about finishing stuff, as rough as it is. Even like, it's a lot of the stuff we made in the past, I can't really watch. Just because of how rough it was, how many corners we had to cut because of lack of money, lack of resources. Man, it's just, we're all doing we're doing all the heavy lifting ourselves without structures and support. So you look at it and you could see what it could have been, but then what makes it all better is seeing what I'm talking about, how the work lived outside in the world. Very simple example is Makmende, which was made, the music video for just a band song called Ha Hey, which featured a character called Makmende, and the video was made with a budget of crisps for our friends who were in the in the video.
Crisps and 1 liter sodas.
Yeah, because that was when we could drink soda, and without just dying. But yeah, and it was if you remember even the shoots, it's just me and Jim holding the camera and running around. Everyone's just trying to figure out, how do you make this fun? Yeah. How do you make this funnier? We weren't thinking this is gonna be, Kenya's going to be talking about this. No, it was let's just make something fun. And I think at the end of the day, the fun was achieved, but then what it did when it was out in the world was this thing I'm talking about. That's, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I believe you have. Have you watched Hahe recently?
I did during the early days of the pandemic, just in case my life was over. I was like, let me just watch my life flash before my eyes on YouTube.
Via YouTube.
But I did, and I liked it. I'm more fond of it now because it's very rough. It's very, very rough as a video, but I think we had fun with that.
Cool. Who were your influences growing up? And I don't mean, I mean growing up physically, you know, as a child into an adult, but also as an artist. Who would you say your influences have been?
I guess the more interesting one is as an artist, because if I go, my brother, it's like, no one knows who he is. But I guess as I started exploring work, I was always drawn to storytellers, even though I didn't know I was going to be a storyteller, which is why I think, sorry, your question asked about how I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think telling stories has always been at the core of everything, even with the design work, the art exhibitions and all of that. Telling stories about our weird human condition and just how somehow we still persevere through things and still love and care for each other as human beings has always been at the core of that. So when my work is around that, it doesn't matter the medium, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. So in that way, the people who have been most influential for me are people whose work does that in a way that compels me, like, internally to just think about stuff. And sometimes it might not even be the person being influential, but something they made being very influential and core to how I existed. And so through this, for some reason, there was a lot of music video directors back in the day. I used to really geek out about, once I found out that, there was a time, I can't remember, it clicked in my head, like, these 3 songs I've seen were made by the same guy. That's really dope. And now you start getting a language of the person. And I think even one of the earliest things with most popular music video directors back then was like Hype Williams, who he told us it was him.
Hype
but
Williams.
then you also knew it was him. You know, like as soon as Busta Rhymes showed up in a fisheye, you're like, Hype Williams made this and stuff like that. And so there were quite a few, you know, Spike Jonze was very influential for me just because of how random his work was in terms of, if you can't connect the dots between different pieces of work, but then somehow there's a human quality underneath it all that doesn't feel manufactured, doesn't feel fake, but connects everything together. So guys like that, Michel Gondry, a few other music video directors, and then on the film side, I was more inspired by pieces of work like one-offs. Although Spike Lee was there kind of all through. And then you had, you know, films like Little Miss Sunshine or Short Term 12, things that you just saw once and stayed with you really long. But back in the day, I didn't really have people inspiring the art world, the art in me, because I didn't know that's what I wanted to do.
True.
Yeah.
And here you are.
And yet.
What did you say at the... What's keeping you going? You know, it's not a secret anymore to any of us that creativity and the arts are not exactly the crown jewels of our national expression or consciousness. At least they're not seen as that. Imagination is not something that's encouraged. There's so many conversations going on now about the education system because parents are experiencing it firsthand. With this CBC and the things that they have to do. I mean, growing up, you talked about being an 80s and 90s kid. We watched KBC. KTN was like a whole revolution, you know. And I feel, and this is just me speaking as an artist looking back, that there was something about artistry that still had to fall within a certain line for it to be considered Kenyan or authentic. So I'm wondering, in this industry, in this environment that doesn't quite celebrate what is unique or what is odd about us, what has kept you going? What relationships what attitudes, what habits are keeping you going still?
That's a tough one, because I think one of the things that keeps me going is stubbornness. And I don't know if that's a positive thing or if it's in that I feel like I haven't achieved what I want to achieve, so that stubbornness keeps me going. And it's also, I think I've centered my work on myself rather than the celebration of people outside and everything. So, and what I mean by that is there's certain things I'm trying to dig out of myself and find explanations for why I feel or think this way. So a lot of my work also is more questions than sermons. So even when I do make something that has a message, so to speak, its message is usually in the form of a question, because even I don't know the answers. So even with, a film like Katikati, where we explored guilt, shame, ignoring past actions and hoping they fade away. Yeah. It wasn't, the intention, as you know, wasn't to indict anyone, but it was more like a question of why do we run away from things? Why do we not seek resolution in some things and all of that? So because of the work coming from there, it just keeps me going. And so far, I haven't had a reason to quit, just because I'm not doing it for someone else. If I tell myself to quit, I will quit. But for now, I don't really care about plaudits or praise and all of that. And then I know there is the question of how do you eat, but just by doing so many things in my life, I found a way to survive where I think my storytelling and that kind of work is not necessarily the core way that I eat, which kind of gives me a little bit of freedom to still explore ideas. Yeah.
Whose wash money are you eating?
Yeah, you guy. I got a liquor store and a car wash. I can
Literally.
No. But even as I say that, it's not that I have side biasharas. It's just that I'm able to use also these skills and talents to do consultancy for people. Even when I was doing the ads, those are like work you can come in and leave, and it's short-term contracts where you shoot an ad over a few days, finish the edit and everything, and hopefully, if people pay you, you can take some time away to work on other things of your own.
True. I find it interesting. I always feel like, and I don't mean this in a competitive sense, I mean this literally in terms of chronology. I always feel like I've been a couple of steps behind you. You entered the ad scene. I was in the ad scene as well. We were both advertising creatives, and you left the ad scene when I was still I had cold feet about leaving. And I remember you sending a tweet once. I don't even think you were thinking about it when you said I expressed envy at the fact that you had this free life outside, and you tweeted me back and said something like, "Now don't worry, we're waiting for you on this side when you're ready," and that was very comforting. And I did get out and discovered, just like you did, that this industry is difficult. Putting food on the table is hard, and I am now directing commercials just like you did. So what I'm saying is, please be successful so that I too.
Thank you for that prayer.
Are there projects you look back on and wish that you had more time, more money, that you could do it different?
Everything, man. More time? No. I think, because also this is just going back to what, for me, completes work for me is it being out in the world.
Yeah.
So going back and trying to change something might change the alchemy of what happened. So I'm hesitant to also look back at my work in that way. So I try to look back more to learn from any mistakes or errors. I hesitate to say, if I had more money, I'd have done this instead.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know if I'd still be here. Maybe I'd be more successful, maybe I'd now be successful, like money. But yeah, I don't know. Like even the most lo-fi things we made, I think worked just because of all the elements that went into creating them. So yeah, no, I think I'm good.
Are you a believer in the fact that even the limitations are part of the creative process? Have you?
No, they have to be.
Yeah.
Because also life is generally limiting in so many ways. I don't think there's anyone who lives a truly untethered life out of any limitations whatsoever. And I think from that, I'm not talking about adversity, but just general limitations, I think, really help focus our energies. And I think I've just been kind of going over the past few years learning how to appreciate that, rather than, because it's very easy to mourn that you're not in America where your talents would be appreciated and you would have been a wonder kid and all of these other things, and maybe my career I'd have done this and that, and I feel like those maybes and what ifs are a wasted energy and take out so much out of us. So I lost my train of thought there. but yeah, I think the limitations help, and I think it's a hard thing to do, to think of it positively, and how to make lack of. And that doesn't excuse lack of structures and, support from systems that should be there, like government support. And
you're not saying that?
Not like just, it's okay, you don't have money to make your thing.
Yeah.
I just mean that sometimes restrictions, like budget restrictions, can help push creative projects further.
I get the impression in the process of not making peace with the work, but sort of reconciling yourself with the work as it exists right now, and who you were then and who you are now. Looking back at the work that you've done, is there any bit of work that you say, oh man, now that was me, that is complete, I've reconciled with it fully and I love how it exists out there? As you're thinking about that, when was the last time you watched Kati Kati?
I think it's been 3 years.
3 years since you watched it in beginning.
Full, like beginning to end.
Yeah,
it's been a while. But not because I don't like it, but just I watched it enough. Like I feel like I can. The process of making that movie, I was so immersed in it that I can literally hear a sound and be like, "This is happening, and that's about to happen." And like even a cricket or wind, I'll be like, "I know where that wind is."
Yeah.
Just because everything was so carefully placed over time. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, like. I think that's also another thing that's come out of the pandemic time for me, is what you're talking about, which is reconciling myself with the work I made and how I made it. Because also I think, and that's the reset that I feel like I needed, because as soon as you hit any kind of success in anything, as we hit with Jab with music and all of that, there's an immediate roadmap is given to you about what success looks like.
Oh man.
And it's like, so the next thing you need to do is, and if you haven't made another movie in 2 years, then you're done. Your career is over, you suck, you're a one-hit wonder or something like that. But kind of unlearning that and realizing even the first stuff I didn't make on a roadmap, I made out of personal need to make. That's kind of where I've gone back. Yeah. And that's also allowed me to relax, because I think I had hit a place where I didn't know what story to tell next, in that you're like, that's not good enough. It has to blow people's minds. And you keep shelving things and wondering why you suck and all of that. But then it's like, wait, whose roadmap is that? You're not Barry Jenkins. Who do you think you are to even, like look at stuff like that? And and so Kati Kati for me is one of those things that I think that was me fully applying myself 100%. That was 2 years of my life that I will never regret. Worked with amazing people from the beginning of the writing process to the festival run. Yeah. Because every single person who I think Katikati, what made it really special for me was not the film itself, but the people I worked with in every stage. From writing with you, the cast and the crew on set, editing with Louisa, Wanjiko, going into festival runs and having fantastic publicist people who, you know, just showed me a new world that exists out there for film and all of that. So yeah, I think that was for me the one thing that's like, that's quintessential, it's a quintessential part of my life. Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm really blessed to hear an artist talk about their work, look back on it.
Positively.
No, really, and have this sort of like distance from it that they can look at it and be like, yeah, I'm actually proud of how that went.
Yeah. I think it's also because when we're done with work, it's very easy to, I feel like the negative stuff out of work becomes more imprinted in our brains than any positive experience that came in. Like, it's the same thing as you put out something on YouTube, all the comments are, this is amazing. Then there's one guy.
Just one.
Who's like,
there's always that one person.
I could have edited this better. And then that's the guy who sticks in your head.
Yeah.
And you're there going on his channel and you're like, you don't even have anything of your own. And you're here commenting on other things. Let me see what he likes. These are the kind of things you like. And I'm not saying I do this, but
we're not saying you do that.
It's plausible. Yeah.
You've seen the meme where people say all the good stuff I've done and it's someone writing with their finger in the sand, and then all the bad things I've been reminded I've done and it's someone chiseling into stone.
Like,
yeah. I get that, man. Cool. You have, like you've said, you've been part of Just a Band. I was going to save this for the end. I'm sure a lot of people know. Is Just a Band coming back? There have been hints out there, and I just want, to know.
I don't know, to be honest.
That's a nice safe answer. Okay, cool. We'll leave that to you. Having worked in film, having worked in music, not just directing the music videos, but also being involved in making the music itself, you're also an acclaimed music video director. Sauti Sol's Extravaganza was wonderful. You did My Everything, Sauti Sol again featuring Indiari. You did Mungu Halali. And these are just the latest works. I mean, if we chart the path all the way to when you did your first music video, I believe that was around 2008, 2009. What is there something to be learned in the intersection of all these art forms that you're dealing in? It's one thing to be a filmmaker. It's another thing to be someone who makes music. It's another thing to be a commercial director. Another thing to be someone who makes music videos. For those who are wondering, the reason why we do this is first out of necessity. We find that we have to do all these things, and we're hyphenates just so that we are not getting into existential angst as we sit at our tables in our homes, wondering whether any work is going to come. It just happens that we're getting into all these things. But I'm curious as to what you've learned as a result of working in all of this, or any observations you'd make that you could share with us.
I think the experience I draw the most from music videos is, I think where it sometimes trumps other filmmaking type stuff is the need to listen and communicate with the artist whose video you're making, because there's a thing about, I wrote this script, I'm shooting this film, all the crew members are on I'm the captain of the ship, basically. But with a music video, you're the air hostess in first class, and you're not the pilot, you do not determine the destination, you suggest destinations.
Right.
Then someone will tell you, I don't like that destination, it's too yellow. And then you're like, okay. But this, anyway, point is, like, basically, it starts with your simple pitch, like, I listened to the song, this is what it made me think of, this is what I want us to do. But that's not it. Most artists, especially if they care about their music, don't leave it there. They have to contribute to that. And I think it's a lot of the music video making, and I think why I still do it is that communion over the idea and what the song means.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like the lyric says this. Because also I try not to do that like direct interpretation of music videos. Because I'm like, you can hear the song, it's okay. I don't need to paint pictures out of the words they're saying. What I'm trying to do is kind of extrapolate the meaning further. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I think there's a nice chemistry that happens there, especially if you do sync with the artist. That's why I also don't consider myself like a music video director in that I'm a music video house. Like, come to me and I'll make your music videos. A lot of the times it's like artists like Sauti or Bill will send me a few songs and ask me pick one.
All right.
And then, which is always for me so good, because now I can pick what I'm actually resonating with.
Yeah.
And then after that, we build on that together. So I think the music video experience for me allows me to do that on that other end.
Yeah.
So it's more gratifying in the process rather than in the end result. I'm not trying, that's why also my music videos are not exactly poppy, like they're not shiny and dancey, but I like them.
Yeah. I didn't know is that how it went? Did Blinky send you a bunch of songs and say pick one, and you picked Mungu Halali? Sauti Sol sent you...
Sauti Sol sent me the album, and then it was like, what you feeling? And also Sauti Sol, we were supposed to have done a bit more, but the pandemic really messed up plans. But that's generally how it's worked. It's like, and then also because of personal relationships with these people, I can be like, I don't think I'm the person for that, and they won't catch feelings.
Right,
it's
right,
not. I'm not saying your song is bad.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't think I can interpret that song into something meaningful visually.
So speaking of that, you also got to direct their at-home concert. An entire they couldn't, of course, they couldn't launch their album in a public space because the album came out bang in the middle of the pandemic, and so they entrusted you with bringing an album launch to life strictly via video. What was that like? That was
to be honest, it was a high pressure situation because basically they had locked in a lot of dates and a lot of parameters, but didn't have basically, I guess, a direction visually to take it. So for me, it was also why I took it was, this is new. This is a new experience. How can I make something that's an hour long, interesting on YouTube? Yeah. You know, because it's very easy for anyone to click away and everything. And then we had the budget restraints were a lot. So it's like we're in one space. So we were like in this house in Nyari we rehearsed for like 2-3 days and then shot like on one day. And I think it was one of those that it's also rough just because of all these constraints, but I still also have a very fond place for it because there was also a lot of trust given.
That's cool.
Because a lot of the stuff none of us had experience with. So it was just like, okay, we trust that this will work out. And somehow it did.
Yeah, it did. I enjoyed watching it so much. So I want to shift a bit and talk about stories now. If we were to, and I love the fact that you hinted at something about the stories that you like telling. Despite all the difficulties that we're facing as human beings, we're able to find a beauty in it. We're able to find a reason to keep moving, and that beauty is found within ourselves or within each other, and we're able to, find our way ahead, which I think came out very clearly in Katikati. And this is a theme that you want to continue showing up in your work. What stories are you interested in telling that you feel haven't been told? Or what are the things that you feel, that you'd want to pinpoint on that are not being told, or that you think you could tell in a way no one else could?
First of all, I just think generally there are not enough stories being told.
Generally, you're right.
About the Kenyan experience.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a magical Kenya tagline, but I really mean it in
magical Kenya. There are not enough stories being told.
Yeah, the Kenyan experience, but I think for me, I just want to tell my story of my life, or rather draw a lot of what I've experienced into the stories I tell. Because honestly, even in this room, a lot of us might have been born and raised in Nairobi, but that Nairobi experience was so varied and so different.
Yeah.
And I think we just don't have enough of those stories being told. You know, we don't have enough stories of all the different, like, anyway, but what I mean is just generally I don't think there's enough being told about just how we're surviving, how we are still here, how we're still alive. And then also there's not enough storytelling being centered around remembering how this country came to be here. And I don't just mean like colonial stories or all of that. I just mean generally, I think if we told more stories about those experiences we've had, there'd be also a larger base of collective history to draw our identity from. And I think, you know, there's always that, what is Kenyan this, what is Kenyan music, what is Kenyan film? But it's hard to draw. It's like, I guess statistics, I am going to butcher the definitions of statistics in case there's a statistician in the room, but you know, like, you need more samples to draw an average from, you know, like, so if you have 3 films that you're saying these represent Kenya, that's a lie. Or 3 books that you're like,
True.
That's the Kenyan experience.
Yeah.
No. But then you establish a culture. When we're from, and I think that's just basically what's missing. Yeah.
I find it interesting that you say we don't have it, yet what's probably happening is that it's there, it's just not being, let me put it this way. I don't know if we need another movie about, what's this famous, handsome murderer, serial killer in the US. They're making another movie about him. What's his name? Yes.
Okay, he has fans.
Him. It's Ted Bundy, right? Actually, I was about to say Al Bundy, and that's something else altogether.
No, that's a cool guy.
That's someone else. How many Spider-Man movies do we need, really? How many Al Bundy, Ted Bundy? How many Ted Bundy movies do we need, really? What about movies about Washosho and Wanogo? You know, all these. What about stories about monkeys that will shut down an entire power grid? There's a video that went viral yesterday or today with a dude walking with a marabou stalk in town. Have you guys seen that video? Like leisurely just walking with a marabou stalk.
He has
and I was
come
looking
to
like,
rule us all. He is our ruler now.
so this marabou stalk whisperer, what's his story? You turn on the news. No, I'm not going to talk about the news. You get onto your social media, and there's just all of these strands that if you were just to pick them out and just, you know, like you're pulling a wire out of the ground and seeing where it's leading to, so many freaking stories that could be told. I am wondering, because it's been said that, you know, Kenyans accept and move on, which I completely disagree with. I think they just move on. They don't accept, they forget and move on. Where do you think storytelling would fit into, and I think I just want you to like narrow it even more, as someone that's telling stories right now. I know you're working on a couple of projects, you're working on your own, you know, films that you want to come out. How important do you think it is that the stuff that we're going through now that's accessible in Technicolor, real life, that would be forgettable, you know, here now, gone tomorrow? How important do you think it is that that is now registered and put on celluloid, put on stage, put in song, put in literature, put into dance and paintings?
Yeah, I think that's what I mean by that's the stuff that it needs to be like what would I call it? Those little tidbits, those strands as you talk about, those are the things I feel like need to be made concrete in some form or the other. And those are the experiences I'm saying that are so varied and so crazy and so wild. And I think them living on social media is not it, just because of the disposable nature of social media.
Absolutely.
And, so it's like, how do you publish? I think also we're getting there in that a lot more, in terms of the creation of media becoming a lot more accessible to most people. is helping with this. Podcasting growing, we have, I think there's a lot of writing, compelling writing coming out of Kenya right now, short form and long, in terms of literature. I think music could do a bit more in terms of pushing life out there a bit more. So I think it's happening slowly. It's going to take time, and I just hope more people put their work out, because also that's the other thing. Like, there's a lot of amazing storytelling happening in very closed circles or in people's heads, and it's just it's life does that, but it's just, I think if there was a way for it to just keep getting out, and I guess also the pandemic has made that harder, because you can't be like attend more exhibitions and all that kind of stuff, because it's like there's nothing happening. But I guess it's just, if people could just try to find a way of getting their stories out there, the storytellers. It's not necessarily everyone. I think it can,
To pick up on something that you'd said before, it's one thing for the storyteller to put their work out there, a whole other thing for that story to be consumed by people. Before I ask the question, I want to know how many people here, this is not an indictment, there's no camera on you. How many of you have seen Katikati, by show of hands? Okay, Katikati is on YouTube, I just want you to know, it's in its entirety. Please watch it. How many of you have seen Nairobi Half-Life? More hands. How many of you, keep the hands up, please. It's just a little exercise. How many of you watched it at the cinema? Keep your hand up. One person. Wow. Two. Is there someone? I see another person there. Okay. So Nairobi Half-Life is on YouTube as well. Before it came on YouTube, there's a lot of people who'd seen it. If you hadn't seen it on cinema and seen it on an official DVD, then you saw it some other way. I'm just... What do you feel about the consumption of the work? I think it's one thing for the work to be out there. Tetu Shani, for instance, put out a playlist on Spotify called Alt Kenya that was all about the music Kenyan music that you'll not hear being played on the radio. And it's hours long. There's Kenyan artists or artists that are in the diaspora who would in some degree call Kenya home, and it's a beautiful playlist. I remember listening to it, and I've been very emotional during this pandemic period, guys, so let me just put this out there. I was taking a walk and I felt my eyes tearing up, because I was like, I had no idea this stuff was there. I did not know, I had forgotten the capabilities that Kenyan people have to tell stories, even if it's through song. And it was stories about someone mourning a dead relative, or someone talking about being the Catholic with the weird colored socks, or someone else talking about a chance encounter, cinematic stuff, a chance encounter with someone that they'll never see again, and they gave them a name and gave them a story, and that story was a song. This music was out there. This stuff was on Spotify. Tetu wasn't putting up anything that wasn't there already. All he did was compile it and say, guys, here you go. I wonder what you think about that, because there's stuff that you've put out there that I'll go back and look at and be like, man, I wish this had more views. There's stuff that I've put out, right, and been like, wow, I wish there was more bums on seats. But then there's also stuff that I've been joyfully, pleasantly surprised that more people showed up than I expected. I'm asking this more as a retrospective look from someone that has been making work for so long, and I have to commend you for that. You've been here for a while. What's to be said about work that's out there that would benefit people but is not accessible, whether it's physical barriers, whether it's mental barriers? I don't know,
Man, to be honest, that's the one question I can honestly tell you I don't think I have an answer for.
Is it something you mull over?
So in this time of reconciling and trying to figure out what I do want for myself and my work, it's been one of the things where I have had to kind of free myself from that heavy feeling of responsibility of not enough people seeing my work. And I think this is where the structures come into play. You know, like in fully formed and developed creative industries, you have support structures that do different things. Yeah. And distribution is a thing. Distribution here is not a thing and doesn't exist, and it's become increasingly difficult over the last decade, especially to find things, especially because all social media networks are curating what we see based on what they think we want to see.
Or selfish, capitalistic
and it centers and basically funnels you in one little direction of material and content that you get to see. Discovery becomes almost impossible. So even like when Spotify is like, here's your discovery playlist, it's still based on it's not like they're just being, here's random. We're just going to throw random at you. It's still based on some sort of algorithm and everything. And I think putting that weight on the creators and the artists, I'm not saying it's not work to be done. I'm not saying they should ignore it, but I think personally what I'm kind of going through is kind of freeing myself from that weight and responsibility to feel like I should put my work in your eyeball.
True.
You know, and even when you, and I don't think it's a new thing, because even like you go back in history, like, you know, like the guy who wrote Moby Dick, forgotten his name. Does anyone know who wrote Moby Dick? No, sorry. I think the mask muffled it, but Herman Melville. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. And died broke, poor. Moby Dick became a hit after. And we know so many examples of such artists, you know, Van Gogh, poor artwork. You know, even Basquiat, yes, he had a good life, but even his success of his work came after.
Actually posthumous, yeah.
So it's a tricky thing when you consider that that has been happening throughout time. I mean, now I feel like it's almost like everything is stacked against us even more. Yeah. In terms of natural discovery of new things. I sometimes, this is where I guess luck would come into it. Like with Just a Band, it was easy for me to just pass a flash disc around and be like, check out this vibes. And that's how we got fans in the beginning.
Flash disc, you said? So a flash disc is this little... No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No,
but these were like early days of flash disk when it was like 128 megabytes. And that's a big one. Anyway, but you know, like you'd put out CDs and you would just print 50 and go to school and hand them around to people in school and in unis and all of that, and then somehow you have a fan base. But I feel like that's almost impossible to do now, just because of how the world is shaped and how it's organized right now. So it's tricky, and I'm not sure. That's why I'm saying I don't think I have the answer, because also what I've just been trying to actively do is free myself from the guilt of feeling like my work is not doing enough, or is not being seen. Yeah, it's not doing enough by not being seen enough.
This is not the most pleasant memory for me, but I remember when Supermodo came out. Started off by someone on Twitter who, you know, was like, go out and watch this thing, and, you know, it was very, you know, very strongly worded thing about go and watch this thing. If you're going to be watching Black Panther, which was out at about the same time, about an African superhero, why don't you watch another film about an African superhero called Supermodo? And I remember a lot of people talking about if it's going to be showing at a cinema in the leafy suburbs, how is it that I'm going to go and see it if it's not made for me? And it sparked a lot of conversation about accessibility of stuff. I'm just using that as a segue, using film. I want to swing back to music and think, do you think if there was a Mbithi now, you know, a young Mbithi coming out now and making the dope things, a young Jim, a young Dan, a young Billy, Blinky Bill. I'm curious. I'm sure this is something that has crossed your mind. There's people who are inspired by the stuff that you guys did and said, oh man, I think these people, by unlocking their own natural artistic voices, are giving me the freedom to do the same. That's one thing I would love to do as a filmmaker, is tell people, yo, there's not one, just like you said, there's not one story about Kenya or Nairobi or growing up here. There's millions of them. I'm just telling one of them. I'm wondering what you think about their fortunes now, if they would be able to put that stuff out there, and what, because there's some really cool stuff out there now. I mean, there's people who are making some dope stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely, I think where most of the younger folks are right now is the great advantage is that they have a lot more inspiration to draw from.
Yeah.
Like the well of inspiration is like much deeper now than it was then, even just in Kenya. If you consider how much work had been put out, like by the time even we were making stuff, Kenya kept doing, every decade had a peak of Kenyan music and a fall due to weird. I don't know, guys, tell me if, for those who have lived at least three decades or more, I feel like Kenya, no, it's just because of the comparative nature that you can see it over time. I feel like Kenya has this weird way it exists in decades, where the beginning of a decade is always hopeful, always shiny, always bright. Then we crash hard by the middle going to the end. And you can go back to the 90s. I think 80s was the one which is different because there was a coup. So 80s just started down there. But then 90s we had, you know, the rise came and it was like multi-party elections. Woo! Weekend democracy. And then by 97, we're like, you know, same shit, different day. And then 2002, whoa! Democracy and freedom and music was happy. You know, you're like,
yeah, I remember.
African
those were
and
good
you're
times.
like, yeah,
those were good
like
times.
Ogopa were dropping things and we were all happy. And then 2007, it's led by the political current, but 2007 you're like,
I think you answered your question.
Yeah. And 2007 you're like, oh, Kibaks, you're the same. Shucks. And then crash. And then 2012 comes, but now that one is a bit different because we had no reason to celebrate any of the people who were running.
Oh, so some people might differ. If
we had ballots, 2 ICC.
If they're ballots.
We had...
Oh, they still won.
Yeah. Did they? Anyway, let's not go into this.
That's a good question.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, that was a side point. I'm just saying there's a weird trend. And this decade has started badly, so I'm just like... So now...
Well, maybe it'll be like a reverse curve.
Yeah, maybe.
We start at the bottom and then go this way.
Let's finish it nice.
Yeah,
let's finish it up there. Anyway, sorry, that was a sidebar.
Segue.
Yeah.
Cool. I think it's my final question, and I really hope that there's questions from the audience because we're going to give you the opportunity to ask those questions. I would like to talk about... I'm just wondering how to frame this question. We've worked in the commercial world, we've worked in the corporate world, and there was a glory period during the corporate world where you could throw money at the problem. It's well and truly done now. That's not the case anymore. The money is thrown into profits, but not really into enabling artistic work around brands. I'm talking about advertising. I'm talking about, you know, directing commercials. There was a time, and when we were joining the ad scene, you know, those were the last years. Those were the last glory years. Those were the years of parents sending their kids out of the room when an ad break was playing because there was a Trust commercial with a bottle, you know, with a bottle falling on the ground. And it leaking, and someone... You remember that ad, you guys? One of those amazing days. Do you guys remember Mpango wa Kando? Do you remember Tumechil? TB Natiba? There was just some really, really amazing ads, like really honest, true to God advertising. Boss, do you remember there was a campaign called Weka Condom Mpangoni?
No.
It was a campaign that literally was like, yo, we've given up on you guys. you're going to be cheating on your spouses anyway. Please be protected so that you're not.
Is that the one Jimmy
sicknesses,
Gatto was coming out of shadows? No. Because there's one.
No, that was after.
Jimmy Gatto became the boogeyman for people cheating.
Yes. And
It's
he
like
was
you're
jumping
cheating
out
on
of
your
the
wife.
closet. Yeah. That was Mpango Akando. Then when people are not responding to
And he wasn't
Mpango
telling you,
Akando-
was he saying don't cheat or is he saying
creative work to go out there are still very nestled within the corporate scene. And the independent scene, where a lot of the wonderful ideas that would really be changing the scene would come from, are struggling because there's not enough of those things. Again, personnel, processes, systems, and budgets. I'm wondering what your standpoint is on having worked and applied so much of your creativity into corporate interests. What you feel about that? Is that bad for creativity? Is that good for creativity? I'm using very, very shallow, simple language, but I know you'd be able to process that. And if so, what would you say the trade-off was?
Okay. I think with, especially in the world we live in, I think it's practically impossible to divorce yourself from the capitalistic nature of the world we live in. So, where I'll start with that is I think it's about balance,
Right.
in terms of the work you do. But as you mentioned there, I think we were at a tail end of something interesting in that I think why advertising was flourishing at the time is because it supported the creative work. And the systems, those
really
structures
did.
and systems I'm talking about, that I wish were there for filmmakers, for musicians, even like distribution and all of those kind of things, were inherently in advertising, in the agency. So
I really appreciate that you said that. We would not have known Amasi Maira if she hadn't sang on some PSA for, I can't remember what it was. I was taking your child to school or something. I can't remember, or malaria or something.
even like the fact that I'm saying one of the most successful Kenyan actors, most of us will identify him via Mpango Akando.
It was
Jimmy Gatto.
It was Jimmy Gatto. Yeah.
And he's one of the most prolific actors who has worked in everything.
No, he's
but
amazing.
you'll identify it with advertising.
Yeah.
So I think what has happened.
They were the trendsetters. They're the ones who are looking, what's the trend? We want to throw money on that. Yeah.
And then the creatives there were supported in that.
True.
Your work was just to write, to art direct, it was to do this thing. Yeah. You weren't asking each person to do 10 jobs. There's a media planner. There was a PR person, there was a writer, there was a art director who worked together so that the words and the visuals are not on one person. And I think that kind of freedom allowed the work to be as successful as it was. And the fact that even just the question you were asking, like 2 questions before about how Kenyan musicians, their work can be found, it's because now after you finish the studio session, you somehow have to get a meeting maybe with Spotify, ask them to place you on a playlist somewhere, hope someone stumbles across you on that playlist. You try to do gigs and all of these things, and then because of the nature of how the finances in the music sector are so nothing, you can't build a team, because how are you paying this team? Whereas, and that's the thing, where I think it's very structural in terms of looking at the success advertising had versus the creative sector. And the budgets were a lot. And the corporates didn't really care. So they didn't meddle. It was like a lot more freedom was given to the creative people. Yeah. But then I think this is also changing in that with our economy struggling as it has, you know, it's not just the pandemic. I know the pandemic made us hyper-focus on what COVID has done to the economy, but Kenya has been on this for the last 5 years, and we all know the loans, all of that stuff. Our economy has literally just been tanking slowly in terms of how much money is moving around. And even the reason why I even realized, I think it helped me realize advertising is not the answer, is because you can see the effects there first. The people with budget start closing the tap.
Yeah.
That's when you realize, actually, we're all kind of fucked. I really tried to find I really tried to find another word for that. But so even advertising now, that's why creatively it's also dying, because people are not being supported. So all the ads is someone in the market dancing because they want something.
Yeah.
You don't know whether it's Safaricom, whether it's Unga, whether it's a car, whether it's shampoo, but it's a woman in a market, yay, dancing and screaming. And I'm not even knocking the work, it's like, do the work, but it's not the diversity of work you're talking about, where it's like, one ad is pink elephants flow through my marmalade.
Oh man, good times.
Another thing is this other thing. So I think we're facing, honestly, I might be over dramatic calling it a creative crisis going forward, but even just because the country is not okay financially, economically, which is also another reason why I was saying, like, I'm trying to free myself from feeling some responsibilities, because I feel like the cards are stacked against us as creators, as storytellers. And so if the environment is not conducive, it's like, how do you still find little bits of joy?
Yeah.
And I'm finding that joy in the work. That's just for me personally.
Okay.
And that's why I'm still trying. I have story ideas that I was even telling Christine that I don't know when I'd ever get money to make that. But guess what? Maybe I can tell it as a podcast series and just see how the story lives and works and such things. So I'm also having to learn how to adapt and just do different things. So just to answer your, I guess, so I think there's a little creative crisis happening, and then I think what will end up happening is a lot of artists, storytellers, and people will find themselves in a little bit of a crisis of conscience, because the advertising world is going to get more and more ruthless in terms of what they demand from you. More and more hours for less and less.
True.
With worse and worse pay conditions, and the work being less and less rewarding. And so I think that crisis is going to hit very many people, and it probably already has, because it did hit me. And then so it's just a question of, how do we survive? And I don't know if I found the answer. I think I found a coping method.
Which is what?
Just lying to myself that the work will do something. Yeah, maybe I'll make Moby Dick, and it'll live after I'm gone.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mbithi. I would love to now open up to questions from the audience. There's a mic, a roving mic. So if you just... I have the mic. Yes. I have a question. Chris has the mic. If you just raise your hand and
keep your mask on as you ask your question, and I will hold the mic for you. Mugambi, I just want to say the Masimaira ad was send your girl child to school.
No, that actually, that was Susan Kibokos, yeah.
That was Susan Kibokos,
and someone else, yeah. Masi, it's going to come to me, I promise you.
I was in school with the girl child from that video.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Washeke was her name. Yeah.
She was in my class.
What? A celebrity.
Here is a question.
All right.
So, a question to you both. What are the 2 or 3 or 5 essential tools when making a short film? What are the must-haves? If I have these things moving forward.
Story-wise or production-wise? Because those are also two different, they can be answered in two different ways.
Thank you. Now, story-wise and production-wise.
Those are 10 points.
Yeah.
Another question?
Sorry, also the lights are very bright, I can't see, so ignore me for squinting.
I was interested in your comment around doing work outside what you want to do. And there's very little conversation around if you want to be as a creator, anyone in the world, it's going to have to be a portfolio career, it's going to have to be, I know for me, I get everything, I feel I'm doing everything sort of right. How do you kind of sensitize the youth so that they understand that if this is a path they want to take, this is what to expect? I think this whole idea of has been sold as a creator, and sometimes even I'm like beg to write or start to write. So how can we help folks understand that that's the reality? You have to be committed to this if you're going to go in.
Yep.
I think a good question. And
Shall we start with those, or?
maybe on, yeah.
Hello, that was a really good talk. Thank you for everything that you shared. This is a question to the both of you. When you're creating your content and your films and just expressing yourself creatively, have you ever experienced the pressures of, like in today's world we have this whole wave of cancel culture and censorship in terms of the material that people put out there? So in your experiences, have you fixed that in what you create? Honestly.
Okay. How do you want to do this?
Let's start with the first question, please. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll answer, and then he'll also give from his take and
Sure.
all of that. And I can answer because I'm also planning to shoot a short film also next month. So I think easiest thing to answer on the production side is you just need a capable team, and what that team consists of for me is, if you have visual and sound taken care of in a way that you feel is satisfactory, because also those things work on a scale according to budget. So if you just make sure you have, and that's not to say get the most expensive thing, I think it's finding the most competent people who work with what they have, because I've met very many people with expensive gear who, yeah. That's the best thing about them, is that they have expensive gear. Anyway, but and so with this team, just making sure if you're not the cinematographer, if like you're just directing, making sure your cinematographer is on the same wavelength as you. Your sound is, short films always overlook sound, just saying we can just record however. But if there's something that can take out people from experiencing a story, is just like someone talking and they sound like they're in traffic outside. And, just an editor who also understands the story you're trying to tell. So also, I think when it comes to story, like this kind of telling your own stories, and this is not just commercial work, that's why I'm talking about people being on the same wavelength as you. Because I think here it matters more than the it's not mercenary nature of commercials, but you can almost put different pieces together in advertising, in other work, commercial work, and it'll work. But I think when it comes to telling these kind of narrative fiction stories that are important to us, it's important that everyone be on the same wavelength. So for me, that's very important. And then on the story side, it's just make sure everything matters to you. Every single word that is put down on the script has to matter. If it doesn't matter to you, it won't matter to anyone else. That's for me.
I would say two things. One, go out and make your short film. I can't think of anything that's more that you can learn more from than actually going out and making it. We talk about it a lot, but we don't. It seems, at least here, that we're not acting up on it enough. Is that you can actually go. We have the equipment. Technology has advanced so much that the ceiling that existed as far as what you need to make a film is now here. It's here with us. There's practically no ceiling. So if you want to get a phone and shoot people, of course, make sure that the production values are high as far as the story goes, as far as who you're using, as far as there still needs to be some production value, but the whole glass ceiling about being able to make it has been broken. So take advantage of the broken glass ceiling. Second, just watch as much as you can. I cannot. We're self-taught. We're self-taught filmmakers. We did not go to school for this. He's talking about having studied IT. I studied IT as well and did advertising for a master's degree. Yet here we are as filmmakers who I'm happy to say have had some level of renown. And it's really been because we have been out there watching as much stuff as we can. There's not a better teacher than people who are out there and have already learned the difficult lessons and have managed to do it. YouTube is an amazing resource now. Go to the University of YouTube, learn everything that you can from there, then get your trusty bunch of people to go and make dope stories with. I assure you, you will find a level of success from that. Yeah. We can go to the second question now. Which
was about portfolio.
Portfolio, yes. Yes. I don't know. I think the tragic thing I think that happened to, and it also I think met us in our generation, was celebrityhood, in that all creators we knew, somehow most of us we knew them because they were stars at what they did. And the problem with it back then, even especially because all we did was see articles and highlight reels on TV programs, was it hid the lesson of the work that was done to get to that place.
True.
And then that has kind of kept going on now, especially in the social media age, where it's now even easier to fake that stardom. Back then even you could say that movie star is a star, but you knew because you watched their movies. But now you'll see people and you'll be told, yeah, they're very popular. And it's like, why? Very popular. Why? They have many followers. Okay. But I think one of the things I've been trying to do with, because I also try to mentor and help as many young filmmakers as I can, is just kind of tell them the importance of the process of the work, and that you don't get to the top. There's no top. Even Clint Eastwood is like 90,000 years old and he's still making movies because the work is the thing for him. And it's been a bit discouraging sometimes, because I have also, you invite a young kid to set, and like how we all started is the most important thing on set is just learn what everything is. And the best way to do that is being a set runner, where you are just everywhere being sent for everything. But then the kid comes and he starts showing attitude to other crew members, saying, I was invited by the director, so you can't tell me what to do. And then crew members come and tell me this, and I'm like, he said what? And these are people who I have working relationships with, and even on set, we're not hierarchical like that, where there's no reference, there's no Ati Mbithi said, any of that. But anyway, the point is, I try to do my best to just encourage them to kind of look at the work as a process, but it's tough. I honestly, aside from dragging them onto the work I do so they see it and see how it's happening and how much of a struggle it is, I'm not sure how to work against a lot of what the social media tells us, that you can instantly be that guy. You meet someone and they're like, have a TV story idea and it's just going to be the best thing, and it's like probably your 10th idea is the one that will be good, not your first. But that there's a knowledge gap there that, to be honest, even me, I'm not sure how to do, aside from if anyone, especially younger, who approaches me and we resonate and click, I try to show them my process in that way, almost like an apprenticeship sort of thing.
Okay, I think you have that covered well. I guess we can go on to the third question now, and I'll take it.
The third question is about cancel culture.
Yeah. We are living in unprecedented times, guys. Let me put it that way. Okay? I don't think that there is a time when a collective consciousness has been so united yet divided. And it's united around words and optics and performances and actions that exist to make it appear that all of us are on the same side, all of us have the same outlook on life, and all of us want everyone else to be better. But we want everyone else to be safe, we want everyone else to be fortunate, we want everyone else to be privileged. But we're also living in a time when the disparities of what we say and what we're living with are polar opposites right now. That's the reality. We can talk until the chickens come home about cancel culture. I don't even believe that it's a legitimate term, because I believe it once was, but I believe it's one of those things that Fox News, for instance, will take and twist around to its own advantage and say the loony left now is riding on cancel culture to take away the classic and conservative freedoms of America, including the First Amendment and all that BS. I think that it is incumbent on artists, whatever form, and not just artists but humans, to go back to the point where we feel things honestly, the good and the bad. And before we have something to say about it, have something to say about what we feel about the bad thing about it. And something honest and something true. Not just to the people that will agree with us, but also to those that will disagree with us. And when we do that and create space for the people who would have a disparate point of view and say, I've been hurt by things that you're taking advantage of, and this loop opens up where everyone is speaking honestly, then we won't need to have this term cancel culture exist. Because people won't be canceling people. Everyone will be speaking and there'll be enough space on both sides to speak and to listen. Our artist's wet dream, pardon me for using that term, is that we open up spaces where people can think, feel, and say what they can, and open up the space for others to do the same. That is what I ask artists to do.
Mugambi Masya. Last round of questions before we get to the last question, which Mugambi will use to close the session.
Hi, thank you so much for that great conversation. Now, Mbithi, during the conversation, you ended talking about how things are bad, and I totally understand. I'm just curious, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? What hope do you see? Give us something great to go with. Thank you.
Hi. 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 Mzuri sana.
I have a question for both of you. I don't know if you'll be able to answer quickly, but question on your own. If you all could pull a Chris Nolan and just walk into Universal and they give you a 100 budget for a movie, I know this journey changes for directors. There are different points in time where maybe you can stop. But in this moment right now, as you're sitting on your yellow and red chairs, what film would you guys like to make with unlimited budget, distribution budget that you always have to think about
Wow.
Last one. This is the last one.
I'm sorry. Hi, thank you. The discussion was really illuminating and really interesting. I'm not so creative, but creative arts play a big part in my life, and my question is based on that. So, I think the most valuable thing we can provide to artists is money, right? Because that gives them the freedom to do what they want, and allows their imagination to run wild. But where money is not available, and I think that's one of the constraints for some of the people who are really passionate about the work that's created in Kenya, what else can we offer that provides some sort of fuel for artists to keep on going? Because the work they create is amazing, and it is inspirational. Some of the names you dropped, the titles you dropped throughout your discussion, Supermodo, Nairobi Half-Life, that's content that's changed people's lives. So if we don't have money, then what do we do to support you?
May I suggest that we start with that question, and then go to the unlimited budgets, and then finish with hope, because that was already our last question.
You want to go first? Okay, I can go first. That's a really good question, yo. And I'll tell you, I appreciate that question. It's because I really appreciate that question because people think when we're asking for support, we're asking for money. And that is as shallow as my child thinks I don't speak to them enough, I'll just add their allowance. No, that's not what it is. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, that's it. But that's the important thing. For the people that do, like you said, you cannot support us financially, that's cool. There's so many other ways that you could support an artist that doesn't have to require an exchange of money. Watch what we're doing. Engage us in the conversations. Engage others in the conversations that are inspired by our work. Tell people about our work. But I'm saying this from a point of pain, and so it's very subjective. The biggest help that you could give us, interact with our stuff, and then keep quiet and go home. This is what I mean by that. A lot of the interactions that I've had before the pandemic happened were people having interacted with my work and therefore thinking that they have something to say, that they're an expert, that they forked out 500 shillings for a ticket to watch my film, or they forked up 1,000 bob to come and watch Too Early for Birds Mboya. And that makes them an authority on the subject. So that when someone comes up with a Twitter thread talking about artistry, or if someone comes up with a Twitter thread for which they want my opinion, they'll be like, but I watched your stuff, what do you have to say about this? But I watched your stuff, that makes me an expert on this. But I watched your stuff, that means that I am complicit in the work that you're making, and I am involved. Or, the more insidious one is, boss, we have the same struggle, so what do you have to tell me about being a Kenyan, or about being Nairobian, I'm an expert just like you. Go to your average, because I'm in advertising now, I have to keep looking back at Kenyan advertising to see where we've come from and where we're going. If you go and look at your average music video or your average thing, if people are not talking about how they liked it, if they're talking about why they don't like it, they're talking about it from the point of view of this perceived expertise that they have because they picked up a few catchphrases from other YouTube videos. Oh, the cinematography. What the fuck do you know about cinematography and you've not been behind a camera? I would say there needs to be an approach to the stuff that we're making that has the same space, the same tolerance that we have for our politicians. Because I know people that will say, thank you. I know people that will say, I hate the way things in Kenya are so screwed up, and be the first one to post a picture with Ruto on their Instagram. And I'll be like, what is this double standard that you're allowing? I'm not asking for double standards as far as the work goes. I'm just saying, let there be some tolerance. Allow us the time to rack up our 10,000 hours. Because the average filmmaker is on hour number 100. They still have a long way to go. If you're stepping on them when they're at hour 100, if Mbithi decides, if I decided I want to be a musician and a rapper, and you decided that you're going to take a crap over everything that I do and say, well, go back to filmmaking. Or if Sauti Sol decide that they want to make a political statement in their work and say, yo, stick to singing, stay there, yo, shut up and run, boy, shut up and sing, boy, shut up and shoot that film, boy, shut up and act, boy, or girl, or other. That, no. Just allow the space and the time. Let us truly be seen and be heard without you having to say anything about it. I hope I answered your question.
Cool. Let me apply a bomb after that.
I need it.
I think because you see, I wasn't one of those guys who was like, oh, at the age of 4, I had a camera and I knew what I wanted to do. I came to this genuinely through my interest of appreciating and loving the creative arts, music and film and all these things, comic books, illustration, painting, everything. Like I consumed it all. And I think the best thing for all of us, even the creators, because also I'll tell you the biggest perpetrators of not appreciating work are creators themselves. True. Let me tell you, go to a film festival and count how many filmmakers are watching other people's films. Oh my God. Anyway, so I think one thing I would encourage all of us to do is interact with work more openly. And I think it goes to what Mugambi was talking about, about just seed. Like when someone makes something, as we were talking about, we know how painful it is to create. When I was even saying that let your work go out into the world and interact with the world, I wasn't saying let it go out and be critiqued. Because also I think critiquing is an art in its own, an academic almost art that I guess that's also going back to what he's talking about, where everyone thinks they have license to do it now. And it's not bad. It's not to say that you have to like everything you see. You can have a negative reaction to the work you see, but that openness to just experience something, to just go for a play, like some elements, be confused by some, not like another, and then let that stew within you and maybe interrogate yourself about why did that make me uncomfortable. And then if it's because there's an offense caused by the work, interrogate maybe now the artist based on that, rather than just the knee-jerk reaction for, I had a better idea in my head, but sour. Like that kind of knee-jerk response is, I think, what Mugash is talking about, where it comes off as harsh critique, rather than, because we're not making, I'm not personally not making my work for you to say I know what I'm doing, because I don't. I'm making my work for you to hopefully be like, I connected with, even if it's just one scene, there was something that was so cool there that reminded me of something. That's for me, the film has worked. It's not that the editing was the best thing I've ever seen. And I'm not looking for those kind of plaudits and applause, and I'm just looking for a genuine moment with you through the work. And that's, I think, goes through all the different media, like music, for me, and it was always a core philosophy, even with just a band, where it's like, if that music didn't make us feel a way, you never had it. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot where it's just like, equal, it's flat, But then there are others where they might not even be the most popular ones, but they're the bandmates' favorite songs, just because of how much even someone else in the band wrote it, and you're like, damn, I felt that. So I think that's the main thing I'd ask, is having that openness to interact with the work. And then because of that, I think we find ourselves being attached more to the artist now, rather than the project. And then you end up doing the things Mugambi is talking about, where there's a natural amplification. It's because I like where this person is going. Because I'm just saying how I view work and how I connect with different artists. It's just like, I like the direction they're going, and I will allow room for missteps. And of course, here I'm talking about, like, not human rights violations. I'm not talking about those kind of missteps. I'm just saying, like, generally just flowing with the artist. And I think from that amplification will come. And I think that's the biggest support you can give an artist, just that genuine amplification that comes from interacting with the work. It's not like new video out, but this, when it comes from a genuine place. Yeah.
Yeah, I like his measured response. It's cool.
Yours came with fire. The question about Christopher Nolan. $100 million. If I had it, I would feed the world, make it a better place for you and for me, and the entire human race. To be honest, I wish, because I feel like there is $100 million in Kenya sitting in apartment blocks and malls that are empty.
Yes.
I wish I wouldn't make one project out of that. I would, dude, you're a filmmaker. If I give you $1 million, one, not 100, you know, like that's a life-changing amount, not for you to pocket, to make something. That's a life-changing amount for an artist, you know? And so I think if we had some sort of, and I'm not talking about an arts fund that is, you know, I feel like because there's that other thing, that kind of benevolent art fund attitude. I'm not talking about that, but just something that is built to become self-sustaining. The same way hedge funds exist, but now you're hedging your bets on films and TV shows. And you'll have some misses, and you'll have some hits. So I would more put it in the system rather than in a film. Sorry, I destroyed your question. I should have had more fun with it. I'd have made Spider-Man meet Batman, and then, but yeah, that's what I do.
I like Mbithi's answer, but you know what I would do? I would ride the current zeitgeist now, which is about stories of modern day heroes that dress up in capes and save people, and then throw it back to one of our own tales. It's not an imaginative answer by any stretch of the imagination. I would make a Luanda Magere movie. I really would. And I would make it with the truth and the sensitivity and the finesse and the smartness of the finest Hollywood film you ever saw. And I would put that money into not just making the film, but making sure that every country in the world gets to see it. Just so that when I'm dead, the term Kenyan film is not a misnomer. It's not a thing that sounds so strange. It's like, I saw that one film, or I saw that ad for that one film. Or, yeah, there was a Kenyan film that was playing at our Cineplex in Budapest, or some remote part of Eastern Asia. I don't know. Like, I want that this film would be seen everywhere, just so that we would balance the narrative as to who owns cinema or where good stories could come from. I would want people knowing that good stories could come from here as well. That would open the route for Noel's film to be seen by people who would have no idea that film came out of Kenya to start with.
Cool.
Cheers.
Okay, the last question is about hope.
Yes. Wait, hold on. Where is my question paper? Here it is. My Mokenya. All right. So just going on that question that had been asked about hope. And I think it's a necessary question to ask. Yes, this work is heavy. It's brutal. It'll exact... I just feel like we need to take a moment. I think we all need to take a moment. I think we need to take a moment to big up ourselves for being here, for still hoping, for still looking forward to something, to still wanting to converse, to still want to vibe with each other when everything out there is saying that we need to stay apart from each other as much as possible, whether it's rhetoric, whether it's the media, whether it's politicians, whether it's a disease. We're still here, we're still standing. So can we just take a moment? It's just a moment. Thank you for giving yourselves and each other that. So I'm wondering, in this emotionally heavy and brutal world and industry, you get a double whammy. Life is hard and your industry is harder. What are your practices? How do you cultivate joy? It's written here. Mariam Kaba says hope is a discipline. And I really like that phrase. How do you respond to that? How have you become disciplined about hope, if any?
So, yeah, I guess also apologies for having brought the conversation with a very heavy, negative tone. But I hope my general demeanor will show you that I'm not too down considering things. I think this is now going back to, it's very interesting because even Christina was telling you that I haven't had these kind of conversations for a long time, since before the pandemic, and this is the first time I'm now assessing a lot of the thoughts I've had and reconsidered about myself and my work, as we've already said,
right,
during this pandemic time. So I think I am learning new disciplines to keep my faith, my hope going, and I can share those, but they're not yet tried and true. They're trying right now. Like that's the effort I'm trying to put in, and I think sorry, lost my train of thought there. Started listening to someone.
They really like.
So just ask the question again. Sorry. Just so I have a bouncing off point.
If we're talking about hope being a discipline, what are the disciplines that you found you're taking over?
Okay, so I think what I've first of all centered myself around is community, especially because in the last year and a half I have gone from grief to tragedy. Like there's been a lot of grief going on, and it's very hard, especially when you're considering this work we do, to be in that space and think that you have to make something or have to create something. And it's also very hard to, I know they say, turn that grief into the work. That process of that alchemy is tough. But one thing that's kept me going is just restoring my most crucial and important relationships. Because also I think before the pandemic, life had gotten too fast, where some of the most important people to me I had not seen in a year. You knew they were alive because you see their IG feed, but then, this moment where life paused for a bit last year gave me a chance to realize why those people were important in the first place. Because, I don't know if you've done that thing where it's like you spend 5 minutes with someone you haven't seen forever and you're like, oh my God, this was so special. And it felt more feeding, like you felt more fed than you felt in a long time, rather than exhausted. So I've now learned to actively cultivate those relationships, because there's no amount of the rat race that can substitute that kind of wholeness. So that's on a personal level. And then with that, also just trying to free myself from a lot of the things that give me anxiety and unnecessary guilt, which we talked about before, which are these things like your work being seen by 1 million people, 1 million views, 1 million likes, 1 million things. I'm trying to free myself from those things, and that's now where the discipline is in trial. It's in trial run, because it's very hard to divorce yourself from that. So you'll drop a South Soul music video with India Ree, and then the thing I'm most excited about is that I was on a Zoom call with India Ree, but then someone is there like, you couldn't bring her to Kenya in the middle of a pandemic. Anyway, and so just trying to not do that thing of letting that one negative comment feed all my anxiety and turn it into, there's a movie like that, a thing, what was there's a Venus flytrap that just kept growing bigger.
Oh, Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes, so my anxieties are like that thing, and any small negative comments is like, anyway. But then also now on the side of the industry, I think one of the things that gives me the most hope is community again. Seeing the work of people, seeing and hearing the work of people I care about. I'm trying to also now be a lot more curious about people's process, and I'm finding that feeding me a lot. So a lot of the filmmakers I admire, I've tried to deepen, I'm talking about locally, deepen my relationships with them. Like, Wanuri can tell you, if you ever meet her, I disturb her a lot, you know, because we've had a previous relationship, but then now it's more my curiosity on how her process is going ends up restoring my faith in my process. Because if I just watch social media hits, I would be thinking that, you know, there's this kind of star, you know, this magic rainbow road that takes you to the promised land. But I'm trying to interact a lot more with people's process, even in the music makers and all of that. It's a very small group, but it's the kind of people who I think it's taking that personal relationships thing and just putting it also in my work. And I think that's really filling me with hope in that people are still, our talents, our gifts are not being hindered by everything that's happening in our toxic environment. There's still a lot to be said, a lot to be done. And that's why right now my dream and hope is just to help as many people get their work out in whatever form and amplify whatever I need to do, connect with, read. Even if people just want me to read something, I try my best too. I don't have all, I also suck at that sometimes because some things can slip between the cracks, but that's what's really feeding me and giving me hope. And I think, especially in this time, you know, artists were already sometimes creators, we're sometimes solitary creatures, but then this pandemic pushed us into even smaller silos, and I think that's dangerous. And a lot of people have struggled in this time, some have not made it through. And I think just that openness of community, I think, is the only thing that will keep us going and give us hope. So the hope is us, I guess, as Mugambi said. It's just in these human connections. That was a long, rambling answer.
I believe it was a good one, too. Ladies and gentlemen, Mbithi Masya.
Again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful, enriching, insightful conversation. Thank you for making it here, for taking the time in the middle of a pandemic, which is still going on, to be here with us today. Ever since March last year, and even before, I always take time to deeply honor the people who come for our events. I never take it for granted. We have so much working against us. The fact that you created a moment in your day to reflect, to participate, to think, to listen is something I really honor. So thank you a lot. So our next session will be next month. So just follow us on our social media handles for the date, the guest, and all the goodness. We are going to hang around for a little bit, but not too long, because I want us all to get home in time before Uber people decide to hike our fares and leave us stranded. We don't want the curfew to catch anyone outside. So again, thank you so much. The hashtag is Baraza Sessions. We were live tweeting as the session went on, so you can get on our Twitter at Baraza Lab to kind of catch up.
Oh my God.
And lastly, we were live streaming on YouTube.
There's a record.
So again, if you know someone who would have loved to be here but didn't make it, you can just go on YouTube and forward them the link, and they can catch up on this conversation. So, clap for yourselves, please. And thank you. Like I said, we'll be here for a few more minutes, and then we'll start going home. Yeah? Something.
Open bar. Tell them there's an open bar.